Darren Grimes is here, though, however, to brighten things up. Very good morning to you, Darren.
Morning.
Thanks very much for joining us. I was only with you the other day doing the old off-air show in which we were able to discuss at some length Jolyon Moore and his pathetic interview on Radio 4 the other morning, but I guess we should leave him to his own devices for the moment.
Leave the fox killer alone.
Leave the fox killer alone with his baseball bat and his kimono. Try not to mention it anymore. But go to YouTube and watch it, please, because it is very good. Now, I heard you on Dan Wootton's show yesterday talking about a great many things. We've got Budget Day today, but it doesn't feel like Budget Day, does it? It feels like we're still in the grip of this kind of weird science fiction movie going on.
Exactly. No one quite knows how bad this is going to get, how fast this virus is going to spread. How can you write a budget? How can you possibly write sensible fiscal policy when you don't know what you've got to respond to?
And when on the eve of the budget speech, the health minister confesses to having got the virus.
I actually gasped out loud. You couldn't make that up, could you?
Unbelievable. And I said to somebody, I was talking to a Labour MP who was at a meeting with her on Thursday, who's now self-isolating in York, right? I said, what about everybody else who was at the meeting? He said, I don't know. Well, surely everybody else who was at the meeting should also be declaring themselves to be self-isolated.
But apparently that's not what the advice is, though. Apparently she shouldn't be self-isolating.
Really?
Because she's being tested and everything's hunky-dory, and that's... apparently she's going against the advice.
Maybe she just fancies a couple of weeks
off.
Well,
I think so.
That's
typical Labour, eh?
I know, absolutely shocking. Well, I mean, bizarrely, I was saying this earlier to Baroness Kramer, who was here from the Lib Dems. I said she's going to have to stand here as the voice of the opposition, because the Labour Party is so disorganised, right? They haven't even managed to give us anybody to talk to about the budget. They offered us their Treasury spokesperson for a pre-recorded interview at 8:30, and we said no. And so far, they haven't come up with any ideas. I've not seen anything from Labour today as to what they're expecting. I don't think they know what to say anymore.
It's opposition for opposition's sake. That's all it is. I tell you what, though, the Tories aren't doing much better. They spelled John McDonnell's name wrong in a donation email yesterday.
Is this the same John McDonnell who said 700,000 people died on the streets?
I couldn't believe that. How misleading is that?
And it was 700, right?
Exactly, 720
I mean, 700 is a pretty big number of people to die.
Of course, it's a horrible number. No one should be dying on our streets in this day and age, but still, to say it's 700,000.
Yeah. I mean, that is Diane Abbott-esque, isn't it?
Well, it is.
The old,
epic proportions.
The maths wrong. But yeah, so, I mean, it's going to be very tricky, I think, for the next few weeks, really, for Boris Johnson and for Rishi Sunak as well, I guess. And I've been saying to a lot of the Tories that I've seen over the last few weeks that I'd like to see them getting back to this kind of, low tax party, which doesn't seem to be the way they're going at the moment.
Definitely. I mean, the tax burden's at a 50-year high, right? It hasn't been this high since we had a socialist in number 10.
Yeah.
Doesn't that tell you all you need to know?
I know. Shocking. I mean, I don't understand because what we're also being told is with all of the spending that they want to sort of affect and all of the infrastructure projects that they need money for, they're going to have to put taxes up, aren't they?
Definitely. I think there's only one way, or through further borrowing. But the public debt's growing at a rate of knots. It's a debt burden that my generation are going to have to carry on their backs for the rest of their lives. I don't think that's a fair proposition to put us in. I mean, it would have been a hell of a lot worse had Jeremy Corbyn been elected, of course.
Yeah.
But it's still, I think, a very unconservative position to put the country in.
Yeah.
Of course, I think that transport infrastructure should be looked at, because I think there are certain areas in the north that need to be connected to boost prosperity and connect people to employment up there. But you can do that without increasing borrowing at a rate of knots.
Yes, exactly right. And do you see this budget very much as a kind of stepping stone, really, for Sunak, rather than the sort of definitive, this is where we're going budget?
I think this will be Rishi Sunak showing us a bit of leg. I don't think this will be, lifting up his skirt just yet. I think...
will he be drinking out of a mug of Yorkshire tea, do you think?
Oh, I think he probably will be. I hope so, too. Although I'm not sure how the left will take that, though.
Well, presumably they'll all get up and walk out of the chamber, won't they?
Well, yeah, quite,
It's the only language they understand. But I was sitting here talking to Pete Wishart a moment ago, and he was saying still that despite the fact that they've gone a little bit quiet for the moment, the SNP, they're still pressing for their own agenda. They're still pressing for their own independence. They want their own independence. Do you think, and I know this is kind of left field question, but over the course of this government for the next 5 years, is there any way that the government is going to have to give in to them in some way?
No, I don't think so. I think it was only in 2014 when we had that referendum on Scottish independence in which they lost. I think time and time again, actually, They didn't manage to secure a majority in the last Scottish Parliament vote. Whether or not next year, if they stand on a mandate of, it looks like Nicola Sturgeon could be out of the leadership, who knows where this is going to go. But I think for now, I don't think there is a real mandate for a second referendum. And actually, I don't think there's any sign that they would win it either.
I certainly don't think there is that. I agree with you there, because I wonder whether they should pick their moment, actually, the Tories, and say, I'll tell you what then, okay, have your second referendum, and just kill it off once and for all. Because if they did have a second referendum and they lost that one, that would have to be the end of it.
Well, I think that's a good point, but if you look at the Scottish economy, if you look at the biggest deficit in Europe, that's what Scotland's running at the minute, I think another referendum would only create more uncertainty. It would exacerbate the issues that they've got there at the moment. So I don't think that's the right road for Scotland. I think they need to focus on things like the drug crisis in Scotland, like the crumbling health service. Exactly. She needs to start being an actual leader of a country instead of a single issue, ideologically driven mad by this one single issue for independence.
Funnily enough, I finally got Pete Wishart to agree with my theory, which has always been this theory, which is that without Westminster saying no to them, they have no life. The SNP wouldn't exist if they didn't have somebody to ask something of all the time. I remember when Alex Salmond was in charge, he used to love the fact that they wouldn't give him any more powers in Scotland, because he could complain that that's why he couldn't do anything. And if you give them all the powers, and if you give them all everything they want, they've got nothing to say.
Well, I think it's rather telling, actually, that they're not using all of the powers that they've got at the minute.
Yes.
You know, they're more than willing, they're happy, actually, to be able to point the finger at Westminster and say this is all their fault. Isn't it nasty old England?
Yes.
When actually that's not the case.
No, exactly right.
It's just incompetent
leadership. And there's
leadership.
a far bigger number of people in Scotland who don't want there to be independence, who want Britain to remain part of, want Britain to be the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Now, I'm going to ask you about the shopping scenario at the moment, because I've got a couple of tweets here from people about the coronavirus. One guy saying he's been to Asda's, no pasta at all, but loads of pasta sauce and tinned tomatoes. What are these pasta planks intending to do with the pasta if they're not buying anything to go with it? I mean, it's really, what are you seeing out there?
Well, do you know what? I was home at the weekend and I didn't see, it's funny, Asda in County Durham, the shelves are stocked. People don't have the cash to be stocking up on all of this nonsense. Right. So I think it depends where you are in the country, actually, whether or not people have got the extra cash to be able to stock up on all of these mad essentials.
Because inevitably, as long as this goes on for, which I assume is going to be quite a long time, it's going to be normal for us to have coronavirus knocking around, isn't it?
It will, but on a serious note, though, I think the more we can contain this and get it through to the summer, the better it'll be, because the more that this spreads, the more at risk these high-risk groups like the elderly become, and I think that is a really dangerous position to find ourselves in. So the more we can do our duty, our public duty, wash your hands.
Yes.
You should be in the first place, you dirty beggars, but wash your hands and do your duty. I think that's the message that should be put out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And as far as Boris Johnson's government so far is going, because you and I haven't had a chance to talk about it on the radio, are you happy with what they're doing, generally speaking?
I think that I'm a bit worried about the green agenda and pushing all of these taxes and new things that will cost hundreds of billions of pounds, upgrading infrastructure, etc. I don't like the idea of that being passed on to the poorest people in society, which could potentially lose them their jobs, etc. But apart from that, I do think he's listening to the people of this country on Brexit. I think we've got a really robust negotiating position, and I'm confident that we're going to leave the EU with our political, judiciary and economic independence restored.
Yeah, no, certainly watching the way the EU is behaving, they don't seem to have quite learned their lesson yet.
No, they're not getting it.
They're still trying to bully us into doing what they want us to do, forgetting that we're actually not any longer a part of the organisation.
It's this theological obsession with the UK accepting level playing field provisions, which would mean that the UK stays subservient to them. That's not going to happen. And the sooner they accept that, the sooner we can get to talking about a pragmatic solution, which is a economic partnership with their closest ally.
Yes.
That should be what they want. But I fear they're going to chop the nose off to spite their face.
I think they may